My name is Kaylee, and I am the National Scholastic Development and Awards Chair. I'll be leading our session tonight. I'm really looking for this to be an interactive session, so please feel free to come off mute, ask questions, be interactive. Otherwise, this is not going to be a very fun session. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. So the first thing that I want to start with is, where do I find information about awards? Oh, and there's some housekeeping information that I forgot about, so bear with me. We're going to be recording the presentation, and Tyler just set that up for us. It's going to be available on Delta Sig University as well as the DSP Learn and Lead app a few days after we wrap up. You've also noticed that Tyler enabled the live transcript for this program. So if you find the captioning to be distracting, you can individually turn it off by clicking on the live transcript button on your Zoom toolbar. And then the last piece of information to talk about before we get started is just to feel free to screenshot any of the slides if you find them helpful during the session. So with that, where do I find information about awards? So for anybody that hasn't already accessed this information, you're going to want to go to dsp.org/awards, and we're going to be looking for the awards and recognition guide, which you'll notice the link for kind of in that left-hand panel. That's going to kind of be your very much go-to information for everything about awards. It's downloadable, and it's going to have really everything in there about awards, recognitions, the details behind them, when they're due, all the information around qualifications and all of that. So these are the chapter awards, which is really what we're focused on here tonight. There's also some individual awards. And for those of you who were around in the fall, we talked about the Collegian of the Year, which is one of those individual awards. So for tonight, we're going to focus on chapter awards. And there's awards for both collegiate chapters and alumni chapters. You'll notice that there are some similarities here in terms of the awards available around outstanding and most improved, outstanding service, professional activities, and collegiate relations. You'll notice that there are 2 awards that we have available for our collegiate chapters and not our alumni chapters, and those are around financial operations and scholastic development. Those individual awards we'll talk about in a minute, but there are some chapter awards that are automatically awarded. So there's nothing that you need to do in order to be considered for these. They're around CMP achievement levels, chapter performance awards, so looking at increases in membership, for attendance at lead events, improved CMP, which is different from most improved chapter award that we just mentioned on the last slide. And then for the alumni chapters, there are programs around achievement levels that are available for you. And then those individual awards that we talk about within this session are Chapter Advisor of the Year and District Director of the Year. And the reason that we bring them up here is because submission for these is on the same timeline as the chapter awards that we just mentioned. So Chapter Advisor of the Year is something that as the chapter you would nominate for. And then District Director of the Year is nominated by your regional vice president. However, I will say that as a former RVP, it really is meaningful when, as a chapter, you reach out to your RVP if you feel strongly about your district director and that they may deserve this award. Not only can it really help give some insight to your RVP when they're making their decision around what DD they want to nominate, but it can really help build out that application with additional information as well. So I encourage you, when you're going through and submitting your chapter awards, to really think about your district director, and if you feel like they would be a good candidate for this award, and reach out to your RVP and let them know why you think they would be deserving. So how do we apply for these awards? As with most things, you're going to do that in the hub. So you'll notice in the left-hand panel of sections, there is a section for chapter awards. Within that, you'll notice that there are all of the applications, and we'll kind of show you the chapter advisor of the year since it's kind of in its own section. You'll notice it's broken out into individual awards here. And then all of the ones that you're eligible to apply for from a chapter awards perspective are in this top section. And you'll notice that it does give a little bit of a description there, more of a blurb, where you're going to be looking in that awards and recognition guide that I mentioned for really more of that detail for the award. Once you open the awards packet, there's going to be a section at the top around qualification requirements. So if the award has requirements that are beyond just, what are the events, for example, it's going to be listed in this top section, and you'll notice that it's not something that you are able to edit. And what I mean by this is that you'll see that it's grayed out. This is information that is being pulled from elsewhere in the hub, and you are not able to populate it here. One of the things that is super, super important to understand, and I'll probably mention this a couple of times throughout the session, is that we need to remember that the due date for the award submission is not the same as the due date for CMP items. So your award submissions are due by June 1st. CMP is closed out later. It is entirely possible that when you submit your awards packet, there are going to be pieces in this section that have not yet been checked because CMP is not yet closed. And in this screenshot, you'll see a perfect example of that. This first line here talks about receiving accredited chapter level for the current academic year, and it's not yet filled in. That will happen on its own once that information is closed out and you've reached it. What I will say is that it's important for you to take a look at this and make sure that the information that is checked or unchecked here is in line with your expectations. So for example, if you look at this and you notice that the box here is unchecked for the chapter has no outstanding debt to the fraternity, and that doesn't feel right to you, you want to reach out as soon as possible to the central office staff and just make sure that either there's not an issue in the system or that there's information that you're not aware of so that you have time to get that addressed before these are due. I promise you, if you're reaching out at 10 o'clock at night, the night that they're due, no one is going to be able to help you fix that. So please make sure that in the next couple days, couple weeks, that's information that you're going in and verifying, and that the things that you are able to control right now, you have everything kind of buttoned up. And that's true for CMP as well. So while those due dates aren't met yet, make sure you're working with your other officers to make sure that the submissions are happening and you're going to meet those requirements as well. It really breaks my heart when we have some really great award applications and then aren't able to consider them because somebody didn't submit something correctly on CMP, or they forgot to submit things and the deadlines passed, and there's not really anything we can do about that. The next thing you'll notice is that there's a lot of information that is auto-populated, that this comes from elsewhere in the hub. So when you go in and you're submitting your professional events and your service events and other types of things, when you go in to build your awards packets, that information is going to be pulled from those forums so that you don't have to re-edit it. Along with this, there are several fields that are going to be read-only for you within that framework of the application. So in these screenshots, for example, you'll notice that the date fields and the number of attendees are grayed out. If there are mistakes or issues with this information, that will have to be updated on the event submission, not in the awards packet. And then Tyler, correct me if I'm wrong, but once the update is made on the event, that should pull forward then back into the awards application.
That's correct. If there's any edits that don't look right or anything that isn't correct, please email hub@dsp.org, and our chapter services team can help try to figure that out.
Perfect. Thanks, Tyler. And again, I will just make a plug for, please do not wait until the last second to submit your application, because we will not be able to consider applications that are submitted after the deadline, even if it's technical issues. They're not common, but technical issues do happen. Please plan to submit at least the day prior, just to be safe. It's also helpful for staff if you do this even more in advance and make sure that you're reaching out with questions or issues so that they're not kind of overwhelmed with a flood of questions and issues. We also encourage you to save along the way, and you'll notice that there's a button on the screen for save and finish later. And this is really important because these applications are long. They're not something that you're going to pop in 5 minutes and finish, at least not if you're building an application for a winning submission. Being able to go in and save for later is going to be so important so that you can come back, make edits, make sure that you feel really confident about what you're submitting. I'll say this once and I'll say it again. Once you submit your application, that's final. We have no ability to unsubmit the application for you. Once you hit submit, you are done. So if you want to be able to come back and make edits, if you're somebody like me and I put everything in there and I need to kind of step away, refresh my mind, come back to it with a fresh set of eyes, make sure you're using that save and finish later button and not save and submit. And if the flip side of that, make sure that you do hit save and submit before the deadline. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to consider the application. So just really be conscious of which button you're hitting and if it's the one that makes sense for where you are in your process for getting the awards completed. And there's the save and submit button. All right, so things to be aware of, and some of these we've already talked about, and I'll just reiterate here. So applications are due no later than 11:59 p.m. local time on June 1st. Be aware that when you look at these applications, the submission's going to have an Eastern time noted. So for those of you in the West, you're going to notice that the time looks after 11:59 p.m. We are aware, we know how to do time zone conversions. Don't freak out. However, like I said, we really do encourage you to submit this early. So if there's technical issues or questions, there's time to get that addressed before the deadline. Again, late applications will not be accepted. We've certainly had applications in the past where someone has come and said, oh no, I had a technical issue, we forgot to hit submit, and we haven't been able to consider those applications. So really, please keep this in mind. And I know I mentioned this a minute ago, but once you hit that submit button, it's in. We cannot unsubmit any applications. And then that qualification section is verified. So if you think you're going to meet the qualification, but you haven't hit submit yet, those are going to submit, update after submitting and will be double checked. So, I know as somebody who's been involved in the National Awards Committee and in the awards committee structure for many years now, when we have award packets come up where maybe one of those boxes isn't checked, we do double check to make sure that it's not an issue or something that was completed on the timeline that's appropriate for that piece of data and just didn't get back updated. So, don't have a panic attack, make sure that everything's buttoned up on your end, but we are able to double check as we work through that process. So how are awards selected? And this is probably going to sound very familiar because the COI process in the fall went through the same cadence here. So they'll start with being reviewed by the regional awards committees. So they'll review all of the submissions in that region. And then the regional winners will be reviewed by the provincial awards committees who will select a winner for each award for each province. And then the National Awards Committee will select a national winner from that pool of provincial winners. Winners will be announced and recognized during the fall term. So previously awards had been recognized at our Grand Chapter Congress events or at our fall lead schools. Will follow more of the cadence of what we've done in prior years in terms of being awarded during the fall. So more information will come in the following months around specifically when you will hear around winners. And then we're going to wrap up here just with some tips for submitting applications. So one of the things that I've seen chapters do that has been really successful is to have a chapter app gathering. So for those of you that have been through this before, you know these applications can be lengthy. They could take a long time to really build out for a winning application. It's a lot for one person to do, and I don't recommend you leaving this only to your vice president of scholarship and awards to complete. It really is up to them to make sure that they get submitted, but really more people from the chapter should be engaged in participating there. And we've seen chapters be really successful where they like plan a gathering and have snacks, order a pizza, get together and work on these applications together. The next one is around being clear. Make sure that it's really understandable for somebody who's reading the application. We have a lot of times people will use terms that are really familiar to their university, their campus, their town, and sometimes it can be, a little more challenging for those of us who don't go to your school or live in your city to suss out exactly what you mean. So really be clear and not using very specific acronyms or things like that. And then lastly, tell a story. Those awards committees are going to be reading a lot of applications. So before you hit that submit button, think about what you've populated and is this going to resonate with somebody reading this? Are they going to remember my application after reading 6 or 7 others for the same award? It's definitely something that as a reviewer of these packets really sticks out when we feel like we read an application and we understand kind of what your goal is as a chapter. What are you trying to achieve? And not just, we had a speaker come to campus and they talked about working in an accounting firm and all of our chapters showed up. That's great, but what did that mean for your chapter? What did everybody get out of it? That type of thing can be much more powerful than just kind of, we had this event and people came. So think about that as you are building out that application. And it's been really quiet right now, so I'm going to pause and open it up for questions and comments. I know we only have a few of you on the call, but feel free to chime in.
If anyone has questions for Kaylee, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question live, or the chat is still open for anybody who wants to submit a question that way. Currently, Kaylee, I don't see any questions in the chat, so I will, again, anybody who wants to unmute and ask a question, please feel free. All right, not seeing any movement on unmuting and no questions in the chat. I'm going to assume that there's not any. And if you have any questions moving forward, again, please feel free to email hub@dsp.org, or in particular for this, awards@dsp.org will also get you to Kaylee, myself, as well as our chapter service team. Kaylee, any last few words here for applicants?
No, I think just have fun with it and really look at it as an opportunity for your chapters to really celebrate the accomplishments that you've had over the last year. It's not just about winning the awards, but really about a time for your chapter to reflect on the things that you've done. So get those applications in, but have a good time doing it. And thank you guys for attending tonight.
Thank you all so much for being here. We appreciate it. We look forward to seeing your applications.